4th Annual International Day of Women in Statistics and Data Science Conference with this year's theme, Thriving in Your Environment. We are recording the event and the videos will be available on the Caucus for Women in Statistics and Data Science YouTube channel. We kindly ask you to post your questions for the keynote in the Q&A chat. So without further ado, I am delighted to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Che Smith. Che is a senior analytics engineer at Netflix, where she helps shape content strategy through thoughtful and reliable data practices. She holds a PhD in biostatistics from UNC Chapel Hill, and her career has spanned public health, FDA, academia, and the tech industry, always driven by a passion for making data meaningful and accessible. Che is also a dedicated mentor, especially committed to supporting women in data science and statistics. And today she'll share insights on how to build analytics work and teams that stay strong, flexible, and grounded through change. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Che Smith with her keynote speech, Rooted and Resilient.
Okay. Attaching them now as a PDF.
Thank you.
Just perfect. What would a talk
large.
about resilience be without modeling some resilience?
Yes,
Did you set this up?
I promise it's worth the wait.
Sure. Do you want to, you can give us a little bit of an intro or
Yeah, I can
background
go
to
ahead and get
yourself if you
started. I
want
don't
to.
need the slides necessarily for the first few minutes, but at first I want to greet everyone and say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for still being here. It's been such a full 24 hours of being immersed in insights and listening to brilliant women share their stories from clinical trials to coding, algorithms, leadership, pop culture, belonging. I feel like we've learned and laughed and maybe even cried together over the past 24 hours. And it's all been within this community built by women and for women. So if you're anything like me, you probably have notes jotted down from your favorite sessions. You've already got things bookmarked that you want to go back and rewatch. You probably have some screenshots and lots of new ideas. And just if you're an organizer or presenter, you're probably breathing a sigh of relief that it's almost over. You did your part. Everything came together so beautifully. So thank you to all the organizers, presenters, and everyone who had a hand in this. But if you're like me, you're also kind of like, you know what happens next. You go back to your regular environment, you go back to your job, your family, your inbox, and then the energy of this moment starts to fade a bit. So before that happens, I really want us to pause and imprint this feeling. I want us to feel the sense of connection. I want us to remind ourselves that we're part of something vast and powerful. So what I want you to do, and if we can, am I able to advance? Okay, yeah, perfect. I just want you to take a moment and just breathe. So just take a deep inhale and exhale. And it may sound corny, but it's worth us doing because we've just spent so much time gathering information, reporting information, taking things in, and now's our time to just breathe and relax. Okay, so now we can move on. This year's theme, Thriving in Your Environment, couldn't have been more timely. For many of us, the last few years have been simply about surviving, just staying afloat amid all these changes that are happening in our world, in our workplaces, in our homes, so much uncertainty, so much pressure. But thriving is different from just surviving. It's about rooting yourself deeply. It's about finding nourishment when conditions aren't perfect. It's about growing through adversity and shining even when you're one of a few like you. And to me, that's truly the story of women in data science and statistics. So I'm so glad that we've taken this time to celebrate our work, our achievements, our resilience, our ability to thrive, and just celebrate ourselves. All right, so let's get into it. So you're like, what is this on this slide? Earlier this year, I decided to start a small garden in my backyard. I was inspired by my mother, who we affectionately call Mrs. Green Thumbs, and my sister has also recently become a great gardener. And I just wanted to feel like I could nurture something tangible, do something that would make me have to go outdoors every day. I was so wrapped up in work, my family, my daily schedule, my routine. And this just gave me something else to do that didn't feel like it required a lot out of me and that I would get a lot out of instead. My sister gave me cherry tomato and basil plants as my starters. My kids and my husband helped me plant some squash and cucumbers, mint and strawberries. And at first, everything was going great. If you've ever gardened, though, you know how quickly that illusion of control can disappear. The winds shift, the sun doesn't shine every day, animals come and dig things up or eat your plants. And sometimes things just don't sprout or plants wilt for no clear reason. And that's really when I realized that gardening isn't just about soil and sun and water. It's about being patient and being adaptable and having faith. And to me, working in statistics and data science and analytics really feels a lot of the same way. You plan carefully, you document, you validate, you test, and then one day something changes upstream and it breaks everything that you do. Or a stakeholder reaches out and says, I have one quick question. I need one quick insight, or all your models or all your code stops running overnight. You can't control every variable. You can't control your environment sometimes, but you can create conditions where growth is possible. You can build healthy soil through structure, through mentorship, and through trust. And to me, that's what it means to thrive in data. It's not avoiding the messiness, but it's growing through it. All right, so on the next slide, I'm going to take you briefly through my journey. Like many of you, the story will sound familiar. My roots are in mathematics. From a young age, I love discovering how numbers could describe the world, patterns, relationships, possibilities. And as I've explored various jobs in my career, I've stayed rooted in those fundamentals of math. I've moved from industry to industry with the same skill set and growing that skill set, expanding my roots and branches and learning what helps me to thrive the most. I've had the privilege of working across several different environments: public health, government, academia, now tech and entertainment. And each of those is kind of like new soil, and each of them has taught me something different about thriving. So let's go through my journey. In college, I was a math major. I attended Spelman College. My mentor, Dr. Nagamble Shah, literally shepherded me into the world of statistics. I did not know that that was a field. I didn't know that was a career option for someone who was interested in math, but she saw the potential in me before I saw it in myself. Through her, I attended several summer research programs. I attended lots of conferences like this one where I saw women, I saw Black folks, I saw Black women, people who looked like me who were thriving statisticians. They shared their stories of challenges they faced and how mentoring and community helped them to be resilient and to thrive. And that was the first time that I realized that thriving doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in community and it happens when you're nurtured. In my PhD program, my perseverance was tested. Transitioning from coursework to exams to dissertation really stretched me in a lot of ways that I didn't expect. But I grew to love biostatistics. I grew to value the importance of public health and the impact that math could have on improving people's lives around the world. And that's when I learned that resilience wasn't about pushing through, but it's about really returning to those roots when the work tests your limits. And what sustained me when things got really tough was my passion for the work. At the US FDA, I reviewed oncology drug applications, which were often on accelerated timelines because of the urgency to help people battling cancer and blood disorders. Every number represented something deeply human. And I learned that precision and patience were forms of care, and it was my way of kind of contributing, and that small errors could have enormous consequences. I really learned to double and triple check my work. I learned how to collaborate on interdisciplinary teams where we had brilliant physicians, toxicologists, pharmacologists, and each of us brought something different and unique and critical to the table. In academia, I taught data science and statistics at Davidson College. I learned that data wasn't just about accuracy, it's the human element and helping people see themselves in the stories that data tells. That's when I started to formulate ideas about data literacy, and thinking of it not just as a skill, but as a way for people to belong. If we have a shared idea, shared notion of what data means and how data is collected and used and analyzed and interpreted, it helps us feel more in community. I got to see the spark in students' eyes when they realized that data touches literally every part of their lives, and they could test and answer their own questions using data. And watching them grow reminded me that thriving spreads, it truly ripples outward. When I entered tech, everything changed. The pace sped up, the stakes were higher, the scale was much larger. I had to learn how to stay grounded in clarity when the world around me was changing daily. I had to learn to formulate opinions more quickly and translate questions into streamlined analyses and cohesive stories, and ones that didn't just inform people, but help them make high impact decisions. For me, the tech world was a storm of change, but we know that deep roots don't fear the wind. I learned that resilience comes from that clarity, not controlling the environment. So on the next slide, to be honest, if I had more time for this talk, I could tell you about how my path has been even more winding than what I've described. But across all these experiences, there's one lesson that really stood out to me. And it's that thriving isn't being the smartest person in the room. It's about building an environment where people and data can work together, both can be understood, and where you can embrace uncertainty and not fear it. And that realization has changed how I thrive now in my current role. Next slide, please. Now, before I tell you how I've mastered any of this, I need to be honest with you. So this picture is my garden earlier this summer. It was thriving. I was picking cherry tomatoes and picking basil leaves and cooking with them. My jalapenos were growing, like everything was going great. But right now, my garden is a bit of a mess. So if we could advance a couple. I'm going to show you another picture where one morning I went out to my wildflower plant, which was really thriving, and I found three bright green cabbage worms just eating away at the whole plant. They ate every single flower off of its bud. I was mortified, but I was also intrigued, like, wow, you ate all those wildflowers that were just here yesterday. And honestly, life can be like that too, just kind of a mess. I stopped tending to the garden as much. I just kind of trusted that things were going to keep going the way that they were. And when that happened, that was a big lesson for me. And I've learned that work can be like that too. It definitely has been for me in the past couple weeks. Sometimes there's projects that are delayed and dashboards, analyses that I've kind of like overthought, put too much time into. There's days when I'm just trying to keep up. But thriving isn't about perfection, it's about being resilient. And in every role I've had, I've seen what happens when systems outgrow understanding. Dashboards break, everybody's scrambling to try to figure out how to get it back up. Metrics are starting to be used by different people in different ways, or you find out that people are using an analysis you did in a way that you didn't intend. What I've learned through all of this is that if you build strong systems, then you can recover more easily and more quickly. So next slide. What I mean by those systems is how people work together, having flexible processes and having rigorous tooling. So for me, as an analytics engineer at Netflix, my roots have been these three pillars: clarity, validation, and communication. These are my grounding principles. I feel like they apply to any industry and any role, and they've really worked well for me. So for me in analytics, clarity is everything. Whether I'm creating a metric, building a model, framing some kind of question or analysis, clarity helps to ensure that everybody in the room understands what we're solving for, and more importantly, what we're not solving for, or what we're not able to answer. Early in my career, I thought that clarity meant having all the answers. And now I know that it's about asking the right questions. It's about removing the noise so the signal can shine through. It's what helps teams stay aligned when there's ambiguity all around, and it keeps us from confusing movement with progress. It's also being explicit about trade-offs because in analytics, every metric we choose reflects some value that we're prioritizing. So I've learned to slow down at the beginning and to define success very clearly early on because that's what's going to accelerate everything that follows. My second pillar has been validation. So for me, this is beyond just testing code or checking assumptions for models. It's about building confidence in our data, in our insights, in the process that we use to get there, and even validating the people that do the work. I learned this lesson early on at the FDA, where every little decimal point can mean a real world consequence. And so validation was both technical and ethical, and it was a form of care, really. And now in tech, validation for me means balancing the speed with the rigor. And it's knowing when, if I'm like 95% confident, that's worth waiting for. And also sometimes directionally there, like identifying a trend is good enough to move a decision forward. And that other layer that I talked about, validating people, it's about making sure that the people that I'm working with feel seen and trusted, that I can speak their language and that they understand mine. And when people feel validated, I feel like they do their best analytical thinking. And then finally, the thread that ties all of this together is communication. I learned this in my PhD program, and I've used it in every job since. And this is just being a clear communicator, finding a clear way to explain your code, your data set, to translate a question into an analysis, not using jargon, not trying to be overly complex when it's not needed, but just being very clear and asking a lot of questions. I've also learned to communicate using different channels. So, how I speak it may be different from how I write it down, which may be different from how I visualize it. But in each case, I need to be very clear about what the message is. So, when I taught students data science and statistics, I tried to teach them that if you're making a chart or a visual, it needs to stand on its own. Someone should be able to look at it and know immediately how to interpret, how not to interpret it, where to focus their eye. So really focusing on communication aside from just, talking with people. Each approach serves a different purpose and a different audience, but together they help create that alignment. And that frees up my time because I don't always have to talk about it. I can show something I wrote, I can show something I created. But it's really about translation. It's about turning people's questions into insights and insights into stories and into tools that help people make decisions and that give people an actionable takeaway that can make someone's job easier and not more confusing. And really, the most important thing about communication is that it's being honest about what you don't know and where you're uncertain. I've learned to be very clear about what our data doesn't know, what it can't measure, and where we're making really strong assumptions. And I feel like that's where a lot of the trust has been built. So these three pillars have shaped how I lead, how I mentor, and how I've helped to kind of build my team and progress my team and help it thrive. These pillars have helped me stay grounded, and no matter where I'm planted, I know I can still grow. So, in addition to these three pillars, I'm going to move on to four values that have also helped me to thrive. So, I call them the four C's. I'm going to start with curiosity. For me, curiosity begins with listening first. So, it's listening to what people are asking you, it's listening for what's confusing someone or how they're misinterpreting something. It's listening for when people have the space to be honest, what's that thing that they bring up first? It never means assuming that I know the full story, whether that's in the data or with people in a room. It means that I'm always keeping myself in a learning mode. So right now, like many of you, I'm exploring the world of generative AI. It's a space that's moving super fast. It's reshaping, like completely reshaping industries and becoming an essential skill. And for me, I'm asking myself, what are the most responsible ways that I can adopt generative AI and wield it in a way where I can preserve my values and preserve these pillars that help me to thrive? Curiosity keeps me growing, not just as an analytics engineer, but as a person who always has loved data and numbers and wants to help people. My second value has been care, having empathy for myself and for my teammates as humans. This is one that's really undervalued, but I feel like it'll be appreciated in this audience because as women, we tend to be thought of and known as more nurturing. And I have learned to really wield this as a strength in my career. So every day on my team, we are each bringing whatever our best looks like on that day. So for me, I was sick all last week. Both my kids were sick. My husband was traveling. The work was piling up. It was just a lot. And so I wasn't showing up as my best self. And for some days, it's my teammates that aren't showing up as their best selves. But what we've learned is that as long as you just show up, that's all that we need. We can kind of take it from there. Because we know that on your really good days, the best that we get is your brilliance. Um, Care really also means like supporting other people, making space for people to be heard, remembering that even if we miss a deadline, if we fall short of some expectation, we can always recover. We can adapt, we can still thrive. And finally, care creates safety. And I feel like safety is what allows people to be as creative and innovative as they can be. And that's really where the thriving comes to play. My third thriving principle is collaboration. So one thing I've learned, particularly at Netflix, is recognizing my way of working. So as an analytics engineer, I like to do scrappy analyses. I have a hypothesis. I think I know of a trend or pattern that exists. And so I want to, as quickly as possible, be able to showcase that pattern before I scale it up into something larger. But on my team, I have people that have very different ways of working. Some people prefer to be very rigorous before they show you, what they have come up with. And so I've learned to intentionally pair with those types of people who have complementary skill sets to mine. So for instance, I have one teammate where particularly when we get together in person, it's like magic happens. We don't have a topic or an agenda. We just sit down and we start talking about weird patterns that we're noticing in our data. And then by the end of the session, we've built this tool together that neither of us could have created alone. I might sketch out what the tool should look like or the analysis should look like, and then my teammate will scale it up and like make it look beautiful. And that's the beauty of collaboration. It multiplies your power, and it helps you do things that you can't do on your own. The final value is coaching. And this is the one that I'm really passionate about lately because I've learned that coaching is a real strength of mine. I'm able to see the areas that people shine, like even when they can't see it. And I think most of that is due to my mentoring. But it's about creating opportunities for people to stretch outside of what they think they can do and then stepping aside so they can take the credit and they can be in the spotlight and they can see for themselves how they've grown. Like I said before, I partner with people who have different strengths from me so that I can learn from them and so that together we can do so much more than we could have done alone. So, in all of this, all these four principles, I'm constantly learning strategies to be more resilient. Next slide. During my first round of gardening, we can skip that one. I think I pretty much covered that. In my first round of gardening, I planted mint seeds, and for weeks, nothing happened. I finally gave up. I dumped out the soil. And when I did that, if we go to the next slide, this isn't my picture, but this captures exactly what happened. When I pulled the plant out of the pot, I saw that underneath the soil, there was this beautiful web and network of roots that had formed, even though there was no sprout. So the plant was trying to grow. It had been growing that whole time, just not in a way that I could see. And so I feel like mentorship is a lot like that. It's that invisible network that holds us together and helps us grow. And as a student at Spelman, our professors really treated our potential as fact, not as a possibility. They told us that being a Black woman in math wasn't an exception, it was part of a lineage and a legacy. And they showed us that network. And that belief really gave me strong roots that I've carried in every, pot of soil that I've been planted in my career. So on the next slide, I'm going to take you through another set of pillars. This is my final one. These are my mentoring pillars, and this is how I've thrived both as a mentor and a mentee because I've done both. I still do both, no matter how far I get in my career. I'm always going to be both the mentor and the mentee. So my first one, this one comes from social media, but it rings true. We listen and we don't judge. When you are working with someone and you're trying to support them, it's best to enter that situation judgment free because you may not know the whole story. And moving to the second pillar, you have to meet people where they are. To put it with my planting analogy, not everybody is a tree. Some of us are seedlings, and seedlings need a lot more care and nurturing than a big giant tree that's been growing for a long time. So you really have to see people where they are and give them the nurturing that one, you're able to give and able to offer, but really, what is it that they need? The third one is I've learned this one at Netflix mostly because I was afraid of it before I joined Netflix, but I've learned to embrace positive and constructive feedback. I feel like as women, even the positive feedback, sometimes we're resistant to a compliment like, oh, your presentation was great. Oh, I slapped it together. It wasn't anything. I've learned to accept the compliments just as well as I accept the constructive feedback and tell myself, how can I continue to do the things that people think I'm doing well? And how can I kind of change course on things that I'm getting constructive feedback about? And I call that like the pruning phase. I'll let you read the other two. They're pretty self-stating, especially the last one. You mentor even when you don't know it. I feel like all of you who've presented during this conference, this has been your way of mentoring. You're contributing to the community. Even if you haven't had direct contact with people, they're watching your work, they're watching how you present, and you're becoming an example. So I hope that you continue to keep that in mind as we continue to build this community. All right, next slide. I just want to acknowledge my mentors, people who have been so crucial along my journey. This is not everyone. These are just the names that came top of mind. And just thinking about particularly the women mentors that I've had in my career and as a student, my peers who have gone on to do such wonderful things. I just want to put these names on a slide so that these people get their flowers in one way or another and that I can acknowledge my root system and my garden of possibilities of people who have helped me to thrive. All right, I'm not going to hold you, so let's wrap this up. Before you go, I want you to take a moment and think what has resonated the most with you from the sessions that you watched. What seeds of inspiration are you carrying home? And please feel free to share in the chat like answers to these questions. Moving to the next slide, this is the one I really want to leave with you. What does thriving look like for you right now? Because thriving is personal. My answer might be different from yours, and it's also seasonal. So what I need right now may differ from what I need, weeks from now or years from now. So really think about this question and try to answer it for yourself. Maybe thriving for you might mean launching something new. Like this conference has been the inspiration to become an entrepreneur or to pursue some new endeavor. Maybe it means saying yes to more mentorship and community. Every time I'm in conferences like this, I'm always like, I should be doing more with the Caucus of Women in Statistics. I should be doing more in the ASA. So how can I say yes, but without burning myself out and having, nice boundaries and peaceful perimeters? Maybe it means resting. And this is a concept that we don't often discuss at professional conferences, but I'm about to discuss it. So let's go to the next slide. I want to highlight this person. This is Trisha Hersey. She's the founder of the NAP Ministry. This ministry teaches us that rest is not a luxury, it's a form of resistance, especially for women of color who tend to labor the most in our societies around the world. It's a way of reclaiming your time, your imagination from systems that demand constant output from you. So you have to think of rest not as laziness, but as liberation. So for me, I plan to rest after this conference and after being sick last week and after trying to catch up with work and moving to a new home and being sad about my garden and all these things, I'm going to rest. And when we rest, our brain helps us to connect ideas in a way that we're not forcing it. Some of my best ideas have come as like daydreams when I was watering my plants or taking a walk, anything but sitting at my keyboard and computer. So as you leave this conference, I want you to remember that rest is part of the work. Rest is part of thriving. It's okay to rest. Daydreaming is part of how you get to your next level. Slowing down doesn't mean that you're falling behind. You're slowing down so that you can propel yourself forward. So don't be afraid to rest. Don't be afraid to let your body and mind catch up to your brilliance. So next slide, almost done here. I want to know, how will you rest? You can put it in the chat. Go take a nap, step away from the keyboard, take a walk, go work out. Yep, in the last session, I heard some notions about like taking care of oneself and resting. Please find a way to rest. Crafting is a beautiful example of that. Whatever you do when you leave here, make sure you know that you are enough. You have everything you need to grow. When you return to your environment, just be sure to tend to yourself and tend to others, water others generously, stay rooted in your purpose, stay open to growth, and trust that everything that you're planning now, you will harvest it and you would not be able to believe the harvest that you're going to have, and you may not even see it. That's how deep your legacy may go. Next slide. This is just a picture of me when I've been rested and happy and sun shining in my face. So I want us all to feel like this. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you for letting me share this space with you. You can move to the next slide, please. And thank you so much for sharing my slides for me. Thank you all for the work that you do, for being here, for the communities that you nurture. I hope you stay rooted. I hope you keep thriving. And it's been a true honor and pleasure to be your final keynote speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Che, for that amazing presentation. And I found it personally very supportive and nurturing and care-filled. And I thought there was a lot of excellent guidance in there. We do have some questions in the Q&A. One of our attendees asks, how do you gain the ability to discriminate what important skills to pick up, especially when you were just starting?
Oh, that's a great question. I feel like that's one where community really comes into play. So lately, I've leaned in a bit on LinkedIn, kind of following, being judicious about who I follow and what advice I take from them. But certain influencers on LinkedIn that talk about, for me, like the field of analytics and like what the important skill sets are going to be in the next few years. Looking at resources on interviewing and different types of companies and what they're looking for. Should I be learning Python? Should I be learning SQL? Like being able to answer those types of questions. So, really leveraging the internet, leveraging communities, leveraging peers, and just being curious and open to finding those types of answers.
Thank you for that answer. Okay, another attendee asks, have you had experience where your superiors or even top management are not very clear, especially with respect to institutional goals, and how do you adjust in this case?
Oh, that's a great one. And without speaking to specific positions, because this is being recorded, it's happened, across multiple jobs that I've had. But there's this notion of managing up. And this is where you, as a person reporting to someone else, kind of have to take the initiative. And if there's not that clarity there, you have to go and seek it. You have to be proactive and persistent and ask questions. Ask things like, what does success look like? Or if I do things this way, what do you think the impact of it will be? So, leading with questions, managing up a lot. And I guess a bolder version of the answer is like getting a group of people together. Like if you're getting different answers from different people, get them all together and get them to say that thing in front of everyone else so that you can reach that alignment across the entire group.
That makes sense. Thank you. What do you do when a team member does not bother showing up if they are not at their best? I mean, you talked about care and understanding, others' life experiences, but I guess, we also need our organization to be productive. So how would you handle that? A team member does not bother showing up, even if they're not at their best.
That's a tough one. I feel like in situations where I've kind of directly managed people, it's having a direct conversation and it's just starting with like, how are you doing? Like, what's going on? This is what I've noticed. This is kind of a break in your usual pattern. This is how you usually show up. This is how you've been showing up lately. What's going on? So again, leading with that curiosity because you never know what they might be facing outside of, whatever workplace or situation that you're in. So start with that question. And then once you have the answer to that question, maybe there's a situation where you need to give that person space to go and take care of themselves and not show up for a while. And hopefully, we all have environments that allow people to do that. So if I'm not able, like last week I was sick. I had to cancel lots of meetings. I had to cancel some things that were pretty important. But the fact was, I could not show up the way that I was feeling. And so I just had to back away. So just being very clear about what I needed, that I couldn't show up then, but I could make up for it in some other way. So on both sides, it's just kind of like being very open, very clear, and leading with curiosity and that care and seeing people as humans before jumping to an assumption that there's some malicious intent.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. Um, what are the most fulfilling and the most challenging aspects of the sectors you worked in? You've had such a range of experience. If you could reflect on that question.
Yes, I think the most fulfilling across every industry has been the people. So I try to only work in jobs and environments where I'm passionate about the work that we do or what the mission is. And I feel like in every place that I've worked with people who are really dedicated to whatever it is that we do. So at Netflix right now, our mission is entertaining the world, and we do that in a lot of different ways. And some people may kind of scoff at that and think that, oh, that seems silly, but it really is important. And especially at the time that I joined Netflix, it was kind of the height of the pandemic. And that's really what people were seeking was just a way to escape, a way to kind of rest and entertain themselves when the world around us was literally crumbling. So I felt that was a pretty important mission. The most challenging thing, I think, in my current role is the scale of data with which we work, and that it can be really hard to uncover insights or to like really scale them up in a massive amount of data that's constantly coming in and going out. But I feel like I have great support from like data engineers and data scientists who kind of help fill in the gaps where I kind of reach my limit of being able to scale data or scale analytics and insights. So yeah, I think that's my answer. It's challenging, but it's one of those things where it's like I see it as an opportunity and I feel well supported to face it.
That's great, thank you. And I'd also like to share some comments. So Nordia says, "Thank you for your presentation. You have such a calming presence." Priscilla
Thank
Greenwood
you.
says, "This meeting has been a wonderful rest. Thanks, everyone." And Nassim Sadra says, "It was a great talk, Che. Thanks."
I love that immediate
Yes.
feedback. I'm all about that. Thank you so much.
And there's a couple more questions.
Mhm.
Cynthia asks, "How do you build trust with your teams? Is there one tip you'd suggest we try?"
Oh boy, this is one that I'm constantly working on to the point that I've started to like seek out resources to help me. So I can show you one that I just got. I got this for work. This is a card deck, and you're welcome to the person that made this because you're getting free promotion. But it's called Where to Begin at Work, and it's just a series of cards, and they're like prompts that you can use to kind of open up a more vulnerable conversation with coworkers. So one of the cards says, when I'm slow to respond, I'm probably, and if I were to answer this question in my current role, it's that when I'm slow to respond, I'm probably juggling multiple things at once, and I have to prioritize in my head. I need to get these three things done, and then I can come and answer your question. So I love these cards because they're just giving me a way of when I'm meeting one-on-one with people, when I'm meeting in groups, if I'm leading some effort or some meeting, it gives me a way to kind of like help people pause and talk really honestly about, where are you at? How are you showing up today? And what can we do to support each other? So that'd probably be my tip. You don't have to buy the card deck necessarily, but if you look it up, it gives you some really good ideas on things to think about your own answer and then how other people might answer if you ask them.
Hmm. So creating really authentic, human-centered environments
Hmm.
is really important.
Absolutely.
Monica says, "Thank you for an inspirational presentation." Vanda says, "Absolutely loved it. Many thanks for sharing." Cynthia asks, "I love that you're so aware of your values. How did you learn what your values were? Do you have tools you suggest for this kind of introspection and self-awareness?"
That's a wonderful question. I think I've always been into like those personality tests because I feel like they've always been very accurate about me. So anytime you throw one of those at me, I'm gonna do it. And I've had very consistent answers over the years that my strengths are things like coaching, supporting people, encouraging people. helping people, just those like very general terms. And I've just learned to wield them. I'm using the word wield like it's a weapon, but just as a strength in the workplace. To top that off, in the past year, I invested in career coaching, which I was very fortunate and privileged to be able to do. But I worked with a career coach who we worked on my value proposition. Like, what do I bring to my current role? And the reason why I wanted to do the coaching was just so that I could grow in my role and figure out, am I doing the things that I am the best at? Am I doing the things that bring me joy? And so we really unpacked my strengths and also the things that I want to be strong in and kind of put those two together. So I think that's the biggest recent thing that I've done to just kind of really ground myself in very specific values.
Thank you for sharing. And Melody asks, what fueled the pivots in your career path, and how did you ensure that this was not an uprooting process, starting over, but advancing career-wise?
It was an uprooting. It has not always felt like I've made forward movements or upward movements. But I think I've always just been driven by a passion for solving different types of problems. So anytime I've like left a position and gone to do something else, it wasn't that I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. It's just that I saw some other opportunity to continue to leverage my skills and maybe work on a different type of problem. But what's been really grounding in that process, which hopefully you got from the talk, is being rooted in, the basic fundamentals of math and statistics and data science. Those are skills that are so portable. You can really take them anywhere. And honestly, I feel like a lot of us, we don't talk about that enough. I think in our academic programs, we're trained to go down these like very specific paths and that you don't switch between them. And I think a rebellious part of me was always determined to make the jump whenever I needed to between government, academia, and industry, and just the belief that I could do whatever it is that I wanted to do, not what someone told me I should do. So it's being a little bold, but it
Mm-hmm.
can feel like an uprooting. You just gotta get yourself potted really quickly, get some water in you, and start to grow again in that new environment.
Yeah, yeah. I loved how you identified your personal values, but you also identified, your work-related values, communication, and so on, which are transferable from context to context.
Hmm.
I never thought about that in particular before, mainly only personal values. So yeah, that was really insightful. Another attendee asks, how do you balance your work and life?
Work-life balance. This is one I like to listen to a lot of podcasts, and I have heard people like Michelle Obama, Sheryl Sandberg. You hear different like women leaders, notable women talk about this. It's a juggling act. So in the last panel session that I was in this room, there was some talk about like outsourcing some of my responsibilities. Sometimes I do the same thing. I feel very blessed and fortunate to be able to do things like if I need to outsource cleaning up my home, like keeping my home clean so that I can focus on spending time with my kids, then I'll do that. So trying to outsource when I can as a way of balance. And also, I may not be like others in tech, but and this is recorded, so that's fine. But most of the time, I shut my computer. When I'm done, I'm done. I'll tell my team. My team's really good about, I'm not available at this time. You don't have to tell people what you're doing or why. We trust each other. But when I'm not available, I'm just not. And that has worked for me thus far. But again, I feel like I'm in an environment where that's acceptable, that's valued, and everybody models it from our CEOs all the way down. So try to put yourself in a good environment. And I think it's a sign that if you don't feel comfortable kind of expressing that you need that, or you don't feel ways to try to get that balance when you can, then that's probably not a great sign of the type of environment that you're in.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You got to find the right soil, that will help you grow personally.
Hmm.
Jessica says, very inspiring talk. Thank you. Um, A different Jessica says, any recommendations on how to nicely tell people that you need work-life balance? I don't like being told to work on the weekend by people who lead a group but are not my boss.
So I'm getting older. I think like 10 years ago, I'd be like, "Oh, you got to be nice. Here's a gentle way to say it." Today, me will say you don't always have to be nice. You don't have to be mean, but you don't have to be nice about it. You can be firm about it. You can state that I have obligations that make me unavailable this weekend. What's the urgency of this ask? Can this wait till early next week? Or if they're, yeah, people who are not your boss. Have we talked with so and so about this? Are they aligned that this is an important task that needs to happen? You got to find kind of like assertive ways to express that I'm not just going to say yes. It may not be a no, but it's going to be how urgent is it? How critical is it? Am I available to do it? Am I the best person to do it? Have you talked to my boss about it? Yet lack of planning on your part doesn't constitute an emergency on mine. There was something else I was going to say on this too, but it may have left me. It's about, I mentioned this briefly, but I got this from a podcast. This person was talking about setting boundaries and she called them peaceful perimeters. And when you think of it that way, it's not that you're pushing back against someone, you're literally building a fence around you, you're protecting yourself. So if you approach it in that way, I think it gives you different ways to approach telling people, not, I can't do this for you, but I need to do this for me. And thus I can't, commit to doing this at this time.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, other advice I've heard before, is no is a complete sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, being guided by your values is really important. So, women tend to say yes more or be people pleasers.
Mm-hmm.
Practicing saying no is really important and identifying what your values are to help you learn, what opportunities are more important to you. And certainly as I've got older, that's easier for me personally. Family is a really big value for me, and there's things I just can't do work on the
Same.
weekends like I
Mm-hmm.
used to be able to do because, right now I'm taking my kids around to look at the Halloween decorated houses and that kind of thing. And I don't even hesitate now to say, no, it's just not possible. But yeah, it's good that to think about there's those shades of gray. Like how critical is this? Is this like a once or twice a year, grant
Mm-hmm.
deadline round? Has the team discussed this with you beforehand and so on?
That made me
Um,
think of one more thing I'll add to
yes.
that, which is that not only do women tend to say yes or like not say no, it's also people who are more junior. You feel like you have to prove yourself, so you can't say no to any ask that comes across your table. So in my mentoring of like more junior colleagues, I try to work with them on that, that you don't have to say yes to everything. You don't have to become like a data service operation to people. You're allowed to push back. You're allowed to ask questions and be curious about why they're asking for what they're asking for, because maybe it's not what they really want, or maybe they're asking the wrong question. So it's okay to have that conversation rather than just say yes.
Yeah. Um, Cynthia asked, what do you have any favorite podcasts for work or life that you listen to and would like to
Oh,
share?
okay. I am gonna both age myself and get really vulnerable, but my favorite show is Living Single. It's a sitcom from the 1990s. It was the original Friends, but with a group of Black women in New York City. They recently started a podcast where they're kind of going through the episodes and talking about what it was like to film at that time, and did they think the show was gonna be big? So that's been really great and nostalgic to listen to that. I also am listening to Michelle Obama's podcast that she does with her brother. It's called In My Opinion or something like that, IMO. They've had some really great guests. Let's see, for work, I don't really listen to podcasts. I try to only consume them as like a hobby or a distraction from work, but I do often find that I get lessons that I can apply to work. So that peaceful perimeters that came from the Living Single podcast. So yeah, it's usually stuff like that, pop culture, beauty, things that are, things that I enjoy, not things that are going to stress me out.
Yeah. So inspiration, but also that balance for rest
Yes.
that you spoke to. Um, one more question. What lessons have you learned from moments when someone you were supporting misjudged a boundary?
For me, it's just a conversation. So I have, in several of my roles, been in situations where because I'm the data person, I'm the analytics person, people come to you with like, quick question, quick question. Can you pull this data for me? Can you do this? And it took people kind of misjudging my bandwidth and that boundary for me to just have a conversation and start to formulate those questions of do I really need to do this? Or like I could do this, but what if I push back a little bit and ask where the question's coming from and who it's for and can it wait? And in most cases, it can always wait. So what did I do in those moments? It was just kind of pausing. It was mentoring as well. It was teammates telling me like, you don't have to be the data pull person, for that group or for that person. You're allowed to be more of a thought partner. You're allowed to be opinionated, and I want to see you be more opinionated. I had a manager tell me that. So yeah, having that community and having someone to notice that was happening, and also me just pausing and asking myself, do I really need to do this, or like, what is the best next step here?
So having that curiosity, I think that's really great because often when people ask us to perform some data related task too, they don't necessarily have an understanding of
Hmm.
what it involves, the actual time commitment.
And they mean
And
well. Yeah,
yeah,
the question's coming from a
yes,
great place, but they have no idea what it takes.
yeah, and we need to prioritize what we're working on.
Hmm.
Okay, well, that was the last question. So I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for your beautiful illustrative talk. That was amazing. And a
Thank you.
sincere thank you to everyone who attended and to the very thoughtful questions. We invite you to join us for the conference closing session next. And if you're unable to, we hope that you've had an inspiring and enjoyable conference experience, and we hope to see you next year. Thank you so much. We'll take just a few moments now. We've got about 5 minutes or so. So if you'd like to get a cup of tea or coffee, if you plan on joining the closing session and have a bathroom break, you're welcome to do that, and we will see you soon.